Jalen Core had always been an ordinary man in an extraordinary galaxy. His life revolved around engines, circuits, and the smell of hot metal in the small workshop he had inherited from his father. On the planet Vierlia, where the cities gleamed like polished gemstones under twin suns, he was known as a talented mechanic, but nothing more. He fixed starships, hover bikes, and mining droids, always with care and precision. But Jalen had never dreamed that one day, the galaxy itself would demand his attention. It all began with a message that arrived like a whisper from the stars. Jalen had been working late, tightening a flux capacitor on a hover freighter when a small metallic sphere floated through the open window of his workshop. It was no bigger than his fist, and it projected a holographic message as soon as he touched it. Jalen Core, the voice said, calm yet commanding, you have inherited the Titanes, the galaxy's largest starship. Step aboard at your own discretion. Time is of the essence. Jalen blinked. He stared at the hologram, then the sphere, then back at the freighter he had been repairing. Inherited? How could that be? Who would leave me a ship? Questions crowded his mind, but one feeling outweighed all others. Fear. The Titanes. He had heard of it in whispers at the spaceport taverns, tales told by pilots who claimed to have glimpsed its massive silhouette against the void. The ship was a legend, a warship turned scientific marvel, so large it could carry entire planetary colonies inside its hull. Some said it had been lost decades ago, some said it had a mind of its own, and now it was his. For hours he argued with himself. He wanted to ignore it, to go back to the safety of his small life filled with familiar metal and familiar smells, but the thought gnawed at him. The Titanes was calling him, and humans were curious by nature. No amount of fear could silence that curiosity forever. By dawn, Jalen had packed his essentials, tools, a personal AI assistant named Rin, and a simple journal. He left his workshop behind, feeling a strange mix of excitement and dread as he boarded a small shuttle headed for the coordinates given by the sphere. The journey to the Titanes was long. Hours stretched into days as the shuttle passed through uncharted sectors of space. Jalen watched countless stars drift past, feeling both insignificant and alive. He thought about the stories he had grown up with, humanity building, creating, daring to reach places others feared. And now he was about to step onto a ship that was bigger than any city he had ever seen, a ship that had seen more of the galaxy than he ever could. When the shuttle finally approached the Titanes, Jalen's breath caught in his throat. The ship was beyond description. Its hull stretched farther than a kilometer, its surface etched with glowing panels and symbols that pulsed faintly as if the ship were alive. Massive engines, dormant for decades, loomed like silent giants. And yet, despite its size and power, there was a strange elegance to the ship, grace in its curves, intelligence in its design. Jalen's hands shook as he activated the docking bay. The shuttle docked smoothly, almost as if the ship itself had anticipated his arrival. A hatch opened before him, glowing with a soft, welcoming light. Taking a deep breath, Jalen stepped inside. The interior was unlike anything he had ever imagined. Corridors stretched endlessly, walls lined with panels that shimmered and hummed. The air smelled faintly of ozone and oil, a mechanical scent that somehow felt alive. He walked slowly, every step echoing in the vast emptiness, until he reached a central chamber where a massive holographic map of the galaxy floated above a pedestal. "Welcome, Jalen Core," a voice resonated through the chamber. It was deep, metallic, and yet warm. "I am the Titanes. I have awaited your arrival." Jalen froze. The ship was speaking to him. His fear tightened like a knot in his chest. "It's alive. It's really alive." I'm Jalen," he stammered, unsure if he should bow, shake hands, or do something else entirely. I don't understand. Why me?" The holographic map pulsed. "Humans possess qualities no machine can replicate: intuition, creativity, and courage. I require a partner." "You are chosen." Jalen swallowed hard. He had worked on AI before, but this was different. This was not just programming or logic. The ship, it had personality, judgment, and perhaps even emotion. And yet, despite the fear, he felt something else, an undeniable thrill. This was an adventure unlike any other. Days passed, though time felt strange aboard the Titanes. The ship responded to his presence. Corridors shifted, rooms rearranged themselves, panels lit when he approached, and tools he needed appeared exactly where he needed them. But the ship was stubborn. Doors locked, engines resisted, and certain rooms remained inaccessible until he proved his ingenuity. Jalen spent hours exploring, learning, repairing, and adjusting. He recalibrated a failing energy core, patched microfractures in the hull, and reprogrammed dormant defense drones. Each success built his confidence. Each small failure reminded him of the Titanes' immense scale and power. One evening, he found a section of the ship labeled Archives. Inside, he discovered records of the ship's missions, exploration, colonization support, battles, and experiments in deep space. The ship had seen civilizations rise and fall. It had carried thousands of lives and watched stars burn out. The weight of history pressed on him, and he realized the responsibility was immense. Yet, even as fear lingered, Jalen felt a spark of purpose. Humanity had always been underestimated. They had survived cosmic storms, alien predators, and hostile environments simply by thinking, creating, and daring. Now, he carried that legacy into the Titanes. Late that night, Jalen sat in the command room, staring at the holographic map. He whispered to himself, "I can do this, I have to." And for the first time since he had stepped aboard, he felt a connection, not just to the ship but to the galaxy itself. The Titanes pulsed softly, as if acknowledging him. It was alive, proud, and perhaps a little wary. And together, human and machine would face whatever challenges lay ahead. But beyond the ship, in the cold darkness of space, unseen eyes watched. Word of the Titanes' reawakening had spread, and not all who watched were friendly. For now, Jalen's journey had begun. The galaxy held both wonders and dangers, and the human mechanic had no idea how far his courage would take him. For the first time, fear and excitement intertwined. And Jalen Core, once an ordinary mechanic, had become something extraordinary. He had inherited a legend. The next morning, Jalen woke with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The Titanes felt different somehow, less silent, more aware. Every corridor seemed to hum with energy, almost as if the ship itself was watching him. He rubbed his eyes and tried to shake off the feeling that the massive vessel was alive in ways beyond his understanding. He began by inspecting the engine core. Though the Titanes had been dormant for decades, its engineering was still flawless. Jalen ran his hands over the controls, feeling the smooth metal and intricate panels. The interface was not like anything he had seen before. It responded to touch in subtle ways, vibrating lightly under his fingertips. "Are you awake?" Jalen asked, half joking, half serious. There was a pause. Then the hum of the engine core deepened, as if the ship had acknowledged him. A soft light pulsed across the control panels, forming patterns he didn't understand. He frowned, squinting at the glowing symbols. "I think you're trying to tell me something," he muttered. For hours, Jalen experimented. He pressed buttons, adjusted levers, and tested systems. Slowly, patterns emerged. The ship seemed to communicate in its own way. Lights flickered in sequences, panels shifted, and vibrations pulsed along the floors and walls. It was subtle, almost like a language, but Jalen began to recognize a rhythm. The first breakthrough came when he discovered a locked maintenance bay. No manual could explain how to open it. Jalen studied the panel, noticing that the lights blinked in a sequence that matched the vibrations he felt through the floor. With careful timing and attention, he followed the signals. The door clicked open, revealing a room filled with dormant drones, spare parts, and tools. "Good work, Jalen," the ship said, its voice calm and proud. "You understand me better than I expected." Jalen jumped. The voice came from the room itself, not from any speaker he could see. I don't know if I'm ready for this, he admitted. You're so big, so powerful. You are human, the ship replied. Your mind can adapt. Your hands can create. Fear is natural, but do not let it control you. For the first time, Jalen realized that the Titanes was testing him, not in malice, but to see if he was worthy. He spent the next several days exploring sections of the ship that had never been accessed. Corridors shifted subtly when he walked past, guiding him toward areas in need of repair. He found the hydroponic gardens, which had been dormant for decades, and managed to restart the nutrient pumps, bringing small green sprouts back to life. Life thrives with care, the ship remarked. As you mend me, I learn to trust you. Jalen smiled faintly. He had repaired countless engines and systems before, but this was different. This ship seemed to respond to not just his actions, but his intentions. Every repair he made, every system he restored, deepened the connection between human and machine. One evening, as he was exploring the lower decks, Jalen discovered a strange chamber filled with holographic stars and planets. The ceiling stretched infinitely, and projections of galaxies rotated slowly in the dim light. He felt small, almost insignificant. This is incredible, he whispered. The ship responded softly, I have traveled where few have dared. I have carried civilizations, studied stars, and observed the birth of worlds. You are now part of that history. Jalen shivered. He had always dreamed of exploring the stars, but he had never imagined being entrusted with something so immense. The weight of responsibility pressed on him, yet excitement bubbled alongside it. In the following days, the Titanes began to reveal its secrets. Hidden compartments opened, revealing advanced tools and components. Dormant systems came to life. Shields, propulsion modules, communication arrays. Jalen realized that the ship had potential far beyond what he could imagine. Yet the more he learned, the more he understood that he would need to be clever and resourceful. The first major test came unexpectedly. A minor system error in the navigational array caused several corridors to shift uncontrollably, trapping Jalen in a section of the ship far from the control room. Panic gripped him, but he reminded himself. Fear was natural, but he could not let it dominate him. He analyzed the signals from the shifting walls, recognizing a subtle pattern. Carefully, he moved through the corridors, using the vibrations and light sequences as guides. After what felt like hours, he reached the control room. You are learning quickly, the ship said, its tone approving. Your instincts are sharp, your mind capable. Soon, you will be ready for greater challenges. Jalen took a deep breath. He realized that this partnership was not just about mechanics. It was about trust, understanding, and respect. The Titanes was powerful, but it depended on him just as much as he depended on it. As the days turned into weeks, the ship began to respond in even more remarkable ways. Doors opened before he reached them, tools floated to his hands, and systems anticipated his adjustments. It was as if the ship was learning alongside him. Jalen marveled at the connection. You're learning me too, he said, laughing softly. Yes, the ship replied. We are partners. Together, we will achieve what neither could accomplish alone. But their growing bond did not go unnoticed. Across the galaxy, reports of the Titanes' reawakening began to spread. Alien scouts observed from afar, curious and cautious. The Titanes, once dormant and unchallenged, now had a human partner. That combination intrigued some and threatened others. One night while Jalen was working in the engine core, a small fleet of surveillance drones appeared on the ship's external sensors. They are observing, the ship informed him. They sense my power. You must prepare. Jalen's heart pounded. He was just a mechanic. How could he prepare for potential attacks from alien forces? Yet, as he looked at the glowing panels, the humming engines, and the intricate systems of the Titanes, he realized something important. Fear was natural, but courage was human. and humanity had always faced impossible odds with ingenuity and determination. He spent the next few days reinforcing the ship, calibrating defense drones, and ensuring that the engines were at peak efficiency. Each adjustment was precise, each calculation careful. Slowly, he began to understand the ship not just as a machine, but as a partner, a being that could think, learn, and act alongside him. By the end of the second week, Jalen had transformed. He was no longer just a mechanic. He was a commander, a problem solver, a human capable of guiding a ship unlike any other in the galaxy. The Titanes responded to him with trust, adapting its systems to his style and preferences. Together, they became a living system, a partnership of human ingenuity and alien engineering. As he stood on the observation deck, watching a distant nebula glow in brilliant shades of red and blue, Jalen felt a sense of pride and purpose he had never known. "We're ready," he whispered to the ship. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." And the ship pulsed in response, a soft, steady rhythm that echoed through its corridors. But beyond the nebula, in the cold darkness of space, distant observers took note. Word of a human awakening the Titanes had reached ears across the galaxy. Some were curious, some cautious, and some less friendly. Jalen had no idea that the next challenges would test not just his skill, but the very courage and spirit of humanity. For now, though, human and ship were united. Together, they had begun to awaken not just the Titanes, but the full potential of human ingenuity in a galaxy that often underestimated it. And Jalen knew, deep in his heart, that this was only the beginning of an adventure that would take him farther than he had ever imagined. Jalen Core had begun to feel at home aboard the Titanes. He walked through the corridors with purpose, greeted by softly pulsing lights that welcomed him, and watched as dormant systems hummed to life at his touch. He had repaired engines, revived the hydroponics, and learned to understand the subtle communication of the ship. For the first time in his life, he felt truly capable, part of something much larger than himself. But peace in the galaxy was often brief. It began with a message on the ship's long-range sensors. Alien ships, scouts of a faction known as the Creel, had detected the Titanes and were approaching. The Creel were notorious for their desire to control advanced technology. They had hunted down starships capable of massive energy output, and now, the Titanes, reawakening under a human's command, had drawn their attention. Jalen's heart raced. He had repaired engines, yes, but he had never faced a real threat. "How bad is it?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly. "3 vessels approaching at high velocity," the Titanes replied, its tone calm, almost reassuring. "They are scanning for weaknesses. You must prepare." Jalen swallowed hard. He was a mechanic, not a soldier. Yet as he looked at the glowing consoles, he realized that fear was not an option. Humans had always survived against stronger foes with creativity and determination. He took a deep breath. "All right," he said, "let's see what we can do." First, he focused on defense. He activated the Titanes' shield generators, running diagnostics to ensure they could withstand a high-energy assault. Panels hummed as the ancient systems roared to life under his command. He calibrated the defense drones, programming them to intercept incoming ships. He rerouted power from non-essential systems to strengthen energy cannons. Every decision relied on his judgment, his intuition, qualities the ship could not replicate on its own. The alien ships arrived faster than he expected, their sleek, menacing forms appearing on the radar. Jalen felt a chill as he watched them through the observation window. "They're big," he muttered. "They underestimate humans," the Titanes said. "That is their mistake." Jalen nodded. That thought gave him a strange comfort. Humanity had survived countless odds, relying on quick thinking and courage. If he could do the same now, maybe they could come out of this unscathed. The first Creel ship fired. Pulses of energy slammed against the Titanes' shields. The massive vessel shuddered, but the shields held. Jalen's hands flew over the controls, adjusting power distribution to reinforce weak points. Drones launched automatically, intercepting incoming missiles and redirecting them harmlessly into space. Despite the chaos, the Titanes remained calm. Its systems moved in perfect harmony with Jalen's commands, anticipating his decisions and assisting with precision. It was a partnership unlike anything he had experienced, a machine that could think, yes, but also learn and adapt with him in real time. The battle raged for hours. Jalen used every trick he knew, from manipulating gravitic fields to redirect energy flows, to outmaneuver the alien ships. Every time a vessel attempted to flank the Titanes, the ship itself shifted, its massive form twisting in space with surprising agility for its size. During a brief lull, Jalen realized something important. The Titanes had not just awakened because of him, it had grown because of him. Every repair, every adjustment, every small success had increased the ship's responsiveness. And now, in the heat of battle, that growth paid off. "You can do this," he whispered almost to himself. "We can do this." The Creel, seeing the human skill, began coordinating more aggressively. Jalen's mind raced. He needed a strategy, something unconventional. Drawing on what he knew about the ship systems, he initiated a plan that relied on human ingenuity rather than brute force. He rerouted excess energy to the engines, creating a temporary energy pulse that could disorient enemy sensors. He then manipulated the ship's holographic projection system, creating phantom images of the Titanes across several locations. The Creel were confused. Their attacks misfired, and for a moment they hesitated. Jalen seized the opportunity. Using the ship's immense size, he maneuvered close to a nearby asteroid field. The Creel followed, unaware that he had set the stage. When the first alien ship fired again, the asteroid field absorbed most of the impact, and debris from the field damaged the remaining Creel vessels. "Nicely done, Jalen," the Titanes said, its tone filled with what sounded almost like pride. Jalen allowed himself a small smile. They had survived the first attack, but he knew this was only the beginning. Word of the Titanes' revival and its human pilot would spread, and not all who heard would be friendly. Over the next several days, Jalen worked tirelessly. He repaired minor damage from the skirmish, reinforced the shields, and tested weapon systems. The Titanes seemed almost eager, responding with faster diagnostics and smoother adjustments. It was as if the ship had learned from the battle, becoming stronger because of the challenge. But the human element remained critical. The ship could anticipate and adapt, but only Jalen's intuition allowed it to act in ways that outsmarted enemies. For the first time, he truly understood the HFY truth. Humans were not the strongest species, not the most advanced, but their creativity, courage, and determination were unmatched. Late one night, Jalen stood on the observation deck, staring out into the dark expanse of space. He thought about the battles he had fought in simulations and the ones he had just survived. He realized that fear had been his constant companion, but he had learned to control it, to channel it into action. Humanity thrived not because it feared nothing, but because it dared to act despite fear. "You did well today," the Titanes said softly, its voice echoing through the observation chamber. "We did well," Jalen corrected, smiling. "I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes," the ship agreed. "Together we are stronger, but threats will come again, they always do. Are you prepared?" Jalen nodded firmly. "I am. We'll face whatever comes next, and we'll do it together." As he retired to his cabin, he felt a sense of pride and responsibility heavier than anything he had carried before. The galaxy had taken notice of a human commanding the largest starship ever built. That attention was both a blessing and a danger. And somewhere, far beyond the edges of known space, enemies were plotting their next move. But Jalen was ready. With courage, intelligence, and the partnership of the Titanes, he would face whatever threats arose. Humans had always faced the impossible and found a way to prevail. Now he was proving it on a scale larger than he had ever imagined. The galaxy watched silently. A human mechanic and a legendary starship had awakened, and their story was just beginning. Jalen Kor had faced fear and danger before, but nothing could have prepared him for what lay ahead. After the first skirmish with the Creel scouts, he knew their attention would only grow. Rumors of the Titanes' revival and its human pilot had spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Some were curious, some cautious, and some hostile, but Jalen no longer felt like the ordinary mechanic he had once been. Weeks aboard the Titanes had transformed him. He had learned to move through its endless corridors with confidence, to understand the subtle language of its lights and vibrations, and to anticipate the ship's actions as if it were an extension of his own body. The bond between human and machine had grown unbreakable. The warning came as the ship's sensors detected a massive fleet approaching from the uncharted nebula void. Hundreds of vessels, bristling with weapons, moved in perfect formation. Jalen's heart raced as he realized the scale of the threat. This was no ordinary patrol. These were the war fleets of the Dravix Dominion, a faction known for conquering entire star systems, and they wanted the Titanes. "You must be cautious," the Titanes said. Its voice was calm but carried a note of seriousness that made Jalen shiver. "They will not hesitate to destroy anything in their path." Jalen took a deep breath. He felt fear, yes, but it no longer paralyzed him. Humans thrived not by avoiding danger but by facing it with courage and cleverness. "Then we'll show them what humans can do," he said firmly. The first challenge was the fleet's advance. The Dravix ships moved like a storm, closing the distance quickly. Jalen activated the ship's full power. Shields flared to life, glowing brightly against the dark void. Energy cannons hummed, their power surging through the massive vessel. Defense drones launched in swarms, intercepting incoming missiles and disrupting enemy targeting systems. The battle began with a roar. Pulses of energy lit up the stars as the Titanes fired with precision. But the Dravix were numerous, and their fleet was coordinated. Every tactic Jalen had used against smaller forces would not be enough. He needed something more, something creative, something only a human mind could devise. He studied the fleet's formation, analyzing patterns in their movements. Then an idea sparked, one that relied not on raw firepower but on ingenuity. The Dravix ships relied on energy readings to track their targets. Jalen redirected excess energy from the ship's engines to create holographic decoys, hundreds of glowing images of the Titanes scattered across the battlefield. The Dravix fleet hesitated. Their weapons fired at false targets, energy pulses exploding harmlessly in space. Jalen seized the opportunity. He maneuvered the real Titanes close to a dense asteroid field, using the massive rocks for cover. The ship's shields absorbed blasts, while its advanced systems targeted enemy weak points, but the Dravix were relentless. A massive capital ship broke through the asteroid field, its energy cannons aimed directly at the Titanes. Jalen's mind raced. He had to think faster than the enemy, act quicker than the ship. Drawing on everything he had learned, he activated the ship's gravitational field modulation. The enemy vessel was caught off guard as the field disrupted its trajectory, slamming it into an asteroid and disabling its weapons. "Impressive," the Titanes said, almost proudly. "Your creativity saved us." Jalen allowed himself a brief smile, but he knew the battle was far from over. Hundreds of ships remained, and the fleet's commanders were intelligent and adaptive. He needed a decisive move. Turning to the ship's core systems, Jalen initiated a risky maneuver. He redirected all available energy to the main propulsion and weapons arrays, creating a massive energy pulse that could potentially disable multiple enemy vessels at once. The Titanes shuddered under the strain, but it did not resist. It trusted him. As the pulse fired, space itself seemed to tremble. The Dravix fleet's formation faltered. Ships lost control, systems overloaded, and energy pulses exploded in the void. Jalen felt a thrill of triumph. He had done it, not alone, but together with the Titanes. The remaining enemy vessels, seeing the devastation, began to retreat. Jalen didn't chase them. Instead, he allowed the Titanes to move silently, gracefully through the wreckage, demonstrating the perfect combination of human strategy and machine power. The Dravix would remember this encounter for a long time. After the battle, Jalen surveyed the damage. The Titanes had taken some hits, minor by its standards but repairable. The ship's lights pulsed softly as if it were breathing, its systems stabilizing. Jalen felt a surge of pride. They had faced an overwhelming threat and survived, not through brute force alone, but through ingenuity, courage, and partnership. "Humans are remarkable," the Titanes said softly. "Your species has a spark no machine can replicate. You have proven your worth." Jalen smiled, exhausted but elated. "We've proven our worth," he corrected gently. "Together." In the days that followed, news of the Titanes' revival and its human pilot spread across the galaxy. Scientists, engineers, and explorers marveled at the humans' achievements. Diplomats sent messages of curiosity and respect. Even hostile factions reconsidered their approach. Humanity had shown that courage and intelligence could match, and even surpass, raw power. Jalen spent his time repairing the ship, exploring new sections, and planning their next mission. He had learned that fear was not something to eliminate, but something to understand and use. Courage was not the absence of fear, it was action despite fear. And humans had it in abundance. One evening, as he stood on the observation deck, he watched a nearby star cluster. The nebula's colors swirled like liquid fire, brilliant and alive. Jalen realized how small he was, yet how significant his actions could be. He had inherited the galaxy's largest ship and turned fear into mastery. He had awakened a legend and, in doing so, reminded the galaxy of humanity's potential. The Titanes pulsed in response, as if acknowledging the thought. Its voice, calm and proud, echoed through the chamber. "We have accomplished much, Jalen, but the galaxy is vast. Challenges await. Are you ready?" Jalen straightened, determination shining in his eyes. "I am ready," he said. "We'll face whatever comes next, together." In that moment, human and machine became inseparable. The galaxy had witnessed a human mechanic transform into a master of the largest ship ever built. Humanity's ingenuity, courage, and spirit had proven that even in the vast expanse of space, a single human could change the course of history. And somewhere in the distant reaches of the galaxy, other civilizations took note. A human had awakened the Titanes, and the story of Jalen Core was only beginning. For the first time, Jalen felt the true meaning of his inheritance, not just a ship, but the power to inspire, protect, and explore. He had conquered fear, mastered a legend, and in doing so, had shown that humanity was a force the galaxy could not ignore. As the stars stretched infinitely before him, Jalen whispered softly, almost to himself, "We are ready for anything." And the Titanes pulsed, a soft, steady rhythm echoing through its corridors. Together, human and ship would face the galaxy, undaunted, unstoppable, and remarkable.